I'll call the meeting to order. It's 1:03. Good afternoon and welcome to the February 11th, 2022 Special City Council meeting. We acknowledge we are on the traditional lands of Treaty 4 territory, treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan and parts of Alberta and Manitoba, the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. To ensure social distancing measures are being met during this time, some members of council and city administration are attending the meeting today through video conferencing. Remind everyone to please ensure your video camera and microphone are off. If a member of council wishes to speak, use the raised hand function to be placed into the speaking queue. And when speaking, remember to unmute your microphone as well as enabling your video camera. Votes will be conducted with a recorded vote. Delegations will be attending the meeting today through teleconferencing to address council on the items on the agenda. And to that end, can I have someone move a motion to approve the agenda at the call of the chair?
Bresciani.
Thank you, Councillor Stanachuk, seconded by Councillor Bresciani. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll consider that carried. I would like to call upon Delegation Sheila Sweard. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any question that members of council may have for you. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Sheila Sweard. I'm calling from Regina, Saskatchewan. I'm not representing any organization at all. I'm just a community member. I don't, as far as the statement is concerned, I mean, I understand that the city of Regina is in a really difficult situation. We're just putting our ideas or our thoughts out there in that I don't know that it's not time to lift restrictions. I think that when they were initially put down, it was for Delta, which was a very deadly form of this COVID virus. And now we're dealing with Omicron, which is different. I just feel that it shouldn't be politicized, and I feel like the decision should be made by the public health officials. And I feel it's too early, and I don't think that we should be lifting it as fast as we are without some kind of course of action. It's just all of a sudden seems like our premier has decided he's listened to a few people and we're just going forward. And I don't know, I'm not behind the scenes. I don't know if there's how much talk has been made with Dr. Shahab and with the public health officials, but it's concerning. And I feel that in some ways the right to choose, which we all have heard, is kind of being taken away from the vaccinated now, because nobody is really, I mean, you can ask for vax passes, but no one's going to do it. And it's going to be one of those things where people are going to be, I think, bullied for wearing masks and for doing those things, because there's a feel, an energy about Saskatchewan that it's just kind of COVID's just sort of a joke and it's done and let's just move forward. So that's, I think, how we feel about things. We're certainly not in favor of this convoy protest, and we feel that we really trust in the medical professionals.
Thank you, Sheila. I'll look to my members of council to see if any of my colleagues have any questions for you. Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon. We appreciate you coming to council and speaking, and I'll ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Amanda Hayward. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions that Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Amanda Hayward, and I'm calling from Regina, Saskatchewan. I have a background in critical care nursing, but I quit work in order to stay at home with my kids, and I'm mainly speaking to you today as a special needs parent.
Thank you, Amanda. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to speak in strong support of the city administration's recommendations to remove the COVID-19 requirements for use of our publicly funded facilities. I have 3 children aged 8 to 11. My 10-year-old autistic son, who also suffers from developmental coordination disorder, sits at an increased risk of drowning. Children with autism are 160 times more likely to die from drowning than their peers. Along with other programming, he missed out on swimming lessons for the entire duration of the lockdown, which could literally become the cause of his death. Last year, a missing child with autism was thankfully rescued out of Wascana Creek. And pre-pandemic, another boy with autism did, unfortunately, drown outside of his school in Saskatoon. I tried contacting City Council several times over the course of the last year for direction and support on how to access city programs for my children. My son suffers from extreme separation anxiety, and I have religious convictions that leave me ineligible to take these vaccines. My husband has been off work because of mandates since October, and before that, we solely relied on his one source of income. As special needs parents, we incur a lot of extra expenses that other families would never realize. Since religion is a protected ground, I was expecting that the City of Regina would be able to accommodate us by allowing me to test with one of the free rapid tests provided by the federal government. I expressed more than once to City Council the fact that these activities would qualify as essential service for my son, which is backed by a letter from our occupational therapist, as well as the province's government website, which lists swimming lessons as an eligible expense for kids on the autism spectrum. However, in order to accompany my son to his activities, I was advised that I would need to be tested through a third-party company, which would cause increased financial hardship to our family. As a result of these requirements, our children haven't been able to participate in the city's programs that have been very beneficial to them in the past. Furthermore, the city's mandates have also affected our ability to access Saskatchewan Health Authority-run autism healthcare services that were being delivered at one of the City of Regina's facilities. These types of services were at one time considered universal and are something that we have long since advocated for. Premier Scott Moe's statement that the province will be removing remaining mandates because the unvaccinated and the vaccinated can transmit COVID equally, an admission that these lockdowns have been detrimental to the people of Saskatchewan come as a breath of fresh air. These types of mandates have no place in a free society, especially as concerns vulnerable populations like the one under which my boys would fall. It remains untruth and unreconciled, but people with disabilities have experienced torture and genocide at the hands of our government, and we're also the last group of people to be included as protected members under the Canadian Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms. Free consent without coercion to any medical procedure was something that I was taught in nursing school for a reason, and something that we should seriously consider in order to ensure that we do not regress back to the days where young disabled men and women were removed from their families and forcibly made infertile. My kids are coming up to the age where your current mandates begin, and the thought of a medical procedure being forced on my son at the age of 12 in order to engage in therapeutic activities does not sit well with me. As you can see from the assignment that my daughter completed as part of her grade 3 class on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, these mandates have had just as much psychological effect on their children as they have had on me. Now that you are aware of the barriers that we have faced, I respectfully request your support to approve the City Administration's recommendation to remove the COVID-19 restrictions, as indicated in the report, in order to make my daughter's dream a reality, that she will be able to go to the swimming pool without her mother being arrested. My family thanks you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Amanda Hayward. I'll look to my colleagues to see if any member of council has any questions for you.
Okay.
I don't see any. I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon, and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Kelsey Travis. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to present to City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions that Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. My name is Kelsey Travis. I'm just representing myself and my family. I am a disability support worker. I have a background in psychology and English, nonprofits, and volunteerism. I am 33 years old. I am also a working stay-at-home mother of 4 children and 2 quote-unquote bonus children from my common-law spouse, Brian. However, in my heart and mind, they are my children just the same. They are in essence why I relocated to Regina a few years ago with my daughter and son. Our children range in ages from 11 years down to our 7-month-old baby. We have a big, beautiful, blended family. I believe that with truly good people in your corner, you can accomplish anything. On Boxing Day 2019, our daughter Devin arrived, a most precious gift to all of us. While in hospital after giving birth, I got a new wicked cough from somewhere. Whether I had contracted it before or not, it appeared after I gave birth. Devin was born around noon, 12:44 to be exact, and I started coughing the first or second night of being in our hospital room together as a family. Mind you, our son had still been attending daycare up until that time, and he out of nowhere had woken up on December 23rd or 24th with severe green conjunctivitis and in later days diarrhea. I rushed him to a walk-in as soon as I saw his sweet, stuck little eyes. He was only 2, almost 3 back then. In-person medical appointments existed at that point in time for all ages in almost all instances. Going back to my cough, it was so dry, deep, and painful, and its onset so fast and furious that Brian and I were genuinely concerned for our new baby and all of our babies waiting at home with their Toto. We asked our maternity nursing staff for masks to return home with to help potentially prevent the spread of this cough amongst our home and family. Remember, this was pre-COVID-19 in December 2019. I've never worn or asked a nurse for a mask before that cough ever in my life, and my fear to protect my children from getting it from me was powerful. I remember how deep and painful this cough was, and I didn't want anyone else to experience it. My first week home included a lot of extra worrying about getting my newborn baby sick or anyone else in our home. As we were moving, and that's a whole nother story, right around the time of Devin's birth, and this was again pre-COVID times, my mom and brother flew from Alberta to be here to meet baby Devin and help with moving, packing, cleaning, cooking, and being with all of the kids. They arrived a few days after Devin's birth and stayed until a few days into the new year. Upon their return home, they both ended up sick with that same wicked cough, likely from me and our house, deep in the chest and lungs. In my heart of hearts, I now believe that this virus I had contracted somewhere in December 2019 was likely COVID-19. I later contracted it again in October 2021. I know this for certain as I lost my sense of taste and smell, which was minor but worrisome nonetheless. Isolation gave me dread and depression, temporarily. Anyways, 2.5 months after giving birth to Devin, the whole world was beginning to be consumed by COVID-19 and related news. I remember it as starting really closer to home around the middle of March, and I could be mistaken. Everyone had their worlds turned upside down in every way. Schools and businesses shuttering, parents having to become teachers overnight while at least temporarily hoping that they don't miss a day of wages or can claim it as a sick day. Childcare on all levels was affected. Grocery stores ran out of essentials like toilet paper and ground meat. In the beginning, and I will be the first to admit, it wasn't as scary or really close to home. COVID-19 felt like a distant fear until it wasn't. I remember telling my eldest daughter after there were talks of it at school, in and out of class, that it would be okay, baby. We won't have any cases here. I was sorely mistaken. Early pandemic days, humans showed their creativity and their compassion. We picked up our old and new hobbies, some good, some bad. We created whole new ways to gather and meet virtually. We gave to those impacted heavily by the pandemic and related trickle-down factors in those early days. As the days, months, and eventual years dragged on, our hope, our creativity, and our compassion all began to dwindle. People became hopeless, desperate, and divided. Families spent months or years without seeing each other, without meeting new babies. Friends and family members who were once so close damaged or even destroyed their precious life or decades-long relationships due to disagreements over vaccines, masks, mandates, and policies, some of which, very frankly, and I don't lay claim to be a scientist, didn't make much sense to me. Job loss, severe economic downturn, yet somehow gross world product went up. However, that is a whole other story. I know about online purchases and emotional spending, but in my mind, it runs deeper than that. Businesses struggling beyond belief, our priceless youth education severely disrupted, home foreclosures, marriages and relationships failing, increased mental health struggles with likely decreased access to tangible help. First-time or third-time or fourth-time moms left with little to no literal or figurative support.
Ms. Travis, I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you that
Yeah.
you've surpassed 5 minutes of presentation so far.
Okay.
Could I ask that you wrap it up in the next 15 seconds or so?
Sure. Just summarizing that people were alone. No matter our age, gender, creed, color, or caste, We all, as human beings this late in the game, have been impacted or ravaged by COVID-19 in some way or another. Please hear my voice. We are ready to live again and move forward respectfully, safely, and finally, truly together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well.
I'll look to my colleagues to see if anyone has any questions for you. Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Carol Schick. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions they may have for you. Good afternoon.
Hello, I am Carol Schick. I'm calling from Scarth Street in Regina, and I'm representing myself, and I hope some others, although not formally. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, ma'am. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be present in this way. Perhaps allowing unmasked and unvaccinated people to participate will work in low-density population areas, but it is not suitable for every population in this province. It might work in rural areas, but it is dangerous for us in urban spaces. To state the obvious, we can't allow in Regina unmasked and unvaccinated risk that people might take for granted in unpopulated places. In the city, we need protection so that we can be together in safety, so that we can come together in shops, restaurants, and theaters. The protections of the last while are what has made community life possible. These new recommendations that remove the requirement to wear masks when we're together as urban people do not make things more possible. They make coming together more risky and more precarious. The so-called freedom that some pursue from vaccine mandates is not glorious. Rather, it is selfish. It is sometimes necessary to make accommodations for other people, and this is one such time. Wearing masks does not prevent anything. On the contrary, it makes community possible because the spaces are safe. When the pandemic first started, we were all learning. There were many things that were tried, and there are some mistakes that were made. One thing that didn't work was doing away with all restrictions far too soon. This happened last year, and the outcome was that COVID spread with abandon. The graphs showing the number who got sick went straight up. People were sent out of province because the hospitals were over capacity. It was a big mistake to open last summer. Canceling masking and proof of vaccination did not allow more freedom. It required even more care and attention to public protocols if a person did not wish to contract the virus. Whereas making mistakes during a pandemic is not surprising, repeating them the second time is baseless and stupid. It means that we are incapable of learning. The risk of opening too early is even greater this time because the data are not readily shared. Are the data actually reliable? Who knows? Opening too early does not allow more freedom for those who like to use that phrase. It only allows for more staying home for people whose health is jeopardized by the freedom call of others. I urge you to wait for more proof that numbers are indeed going down and look as if they're staying down. Do not be hasty. The cost is too high. I urge you not to discontinue proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test for city facilities effective in February, at the end of February. Please continue to require masking on city transit. It is mainly people without other options who use these facilities. They should not be penalized for doing this. Let us learn from past mistakes, not fall in line to repeat them. Please continue the safety protocols already in place at City of Regina facilities. I encourage you to leave the citizens of Regina with at least a few reliably safe places to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll look to my colleagues to see if there's any questions for the delegate. Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon, Ms. Schick, and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thanks very much. Goodbye.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Kelsey Pippin. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to questions that Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, ma'am. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kelsey Pippin. I'm calling from Regina, Saskatchewan. I'm not calling on behalf of anybody. I'm just a citizen. I'm going to try my hardest to get this out in 5 minutes. The last year, myself and countless other Canadians have been pushed into silence, so the chance to now speak out is more important than ever before. So I thank you for this opportunity. While I do believe that the City of Regina will make the right decision and end all mandates and restrictions, I want to use this time to remind you why these mandates are overdue to end, and not only why they need to end, but why they need to be outlawed. Individual businesses need to be banned from enacting their own divisive rules, and it is only by our political leaders standing firm in the name of unity that we can get to that point. I'm speaking personally with a focus on the mental health of Saskatchewan citizens and the impacts that these mandates have had on mental health and on our various rights and freedoms. We have all been fed numbers and science and have forgotten that regardless of what any of that data states, it never justifies the mistreatment of an entire group of Canadian citizens. Our Saskatchewan Human Rights Code, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and the international covenants which Canada signed with the UN in 1976 are where our focus needs to be, as it is these documents that have been blatantly tossed aside for the last year. We've heard a lot of talk about the impact of the past 2 years, but the reality is that the first year of the pandemic resulted in a decrease in suicide, likely in large part to the global slogan to simply be kind. We put hearts in our windows to appreciate essential workers and each other. We made more effort than ever before to check on our friends' mental health, and we were told that we are all in this together. However, it seemed that almost as quickly as the clock struck 12 on January 1st, 2021, the theme shifted from one of kindness to one of division, hostility, judgment, and hate, which has now left us with an increase in mental health crises, not just in Saskatchewan, but across Canada. Early in the vaccine rollout, driving the streets of Regina, it was easy to see that manipulative tactics were being used to encourage citizens to get vaccinated. The language used during this time was one that immediately began to inflate the egos of those who made the choice to roll up their sleeves, and those egos have continued to be inflated by our media and politicians. These vaccines do not prevent transmission of COVID, yet we're still being told that those who received it are somehow better people than those who haven't. My personal story of the past year consists of more breakdowns than I could keep track of. People reaching out only to then tell me that I was dirty, disgusting, stupid, dramatic, uneducated, dangerous, and, as we recently heard, selfish. Let's not forget the remarks that I should just kill myself or the hope that I'd contract and die of COVID. I've been stalked in social media groups to then have these stalkers message me privately to attack me, as well as to speak me out in every comment thread going forward just to harass me. These sentiments were hurled with confidence because our political leaders had succeeded in giving a voice to only one way of thinking. By even toying with the notion of maintaining these divisive mandates, you are complicit to the hateful rhetoric that has been spewed at millions of Canadians during the last year. Holding any room at all for mandates to exist, either from the city, the province, or from individual businesses, tells the millions of Canadians with a story like mine that we don't matter, that our mental health and our safety doesn't matter. Due to these divisive tactics, I now suffer from extreme panic attacks, show signs of complex PTSD, and I even now suffer from mild agoraphobia and have days where I feel too afraid to leave my house. This is my story, but it is not unique to me. There are millions of us across Canada suffering in fear and silence. We must remember that choice is important. Saskatchewan citizens who are still concerned have the choice to continue mask use, get a booster every 6 months, to continue to socialize via Zoom, and to order takeout if they don't feel comfortable dining out. But their fear and paranoia have no justification to overrule the rights and freedoms of Saskatchewan citizens. Former Supreme Court of Canada Justice Beverly McLaughlin said the following statement with regard to Section 7 of the Charter. She is quoted as saying that the right to liberty, the right to make important choices for oneself, touches the core of what it means to be an autonomous human being, blessed with dignity and independence in matters that can be characterized as fundamentally or inherently personal. The Supreme Court of Canada stated that the right to equality guarantees to prevent stereotyping or political and social prejudices, and to promote a society in which all persons enjoy equal recognition as members of Canadian society, equally capable and equally deserving of concern, respect, and consideration. The International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights states in the right to health that everyone has the right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, and that health is understood not just as a right to be healthy, but as a right to control one's own health and body in a way that is free from interference. Coercing people into receiving a vaccine and taking things away from people until they complied did not give people the control over their own health and bodies that they have the right to. Interfering with the public's perception of people who didn't receive the vaccination by implementation of mandates and restrictions also stripped people of any sort of a fighting chance to maintain a positive outlook, therefore affecting the mental health of countless citizens. This fight for our mental health and to be welcome members of society has been going on much longer than just October when the vaccination pass was implemented in Saskatchewan. This is a fight we've been facing since the beginning of the government smear campaign of unvaccinated individuals, which began early on in 2021. For the last few months, businesses have been ordered to refuse certain services to unvaccinated individuals, which is another violation of the Charter. If, for example, a restaurant was found to be serving unvaccinated individuals for in-person dining, they were fined or forced to close. Section 2 of our Charter states that a law will be found to restrict expression if it has the effect of frustrating the pursuit of truth, participation in the community, or individual self-fulfillment and human flourishing. Let us not forget about the Saskatchewan Bill of Rights, which was enacted in 1947.
Ms. Pippin, you're at 5 minutes. I'll ask that you wrap it up in the next 15 seconds, please.
Okay, so simply stated, the rules that have been carried out across Canada for the past year are clear violations of our Charter. So I'm wondering, which side does Regina want to be on going forward? The side that respects all citizens, or the side that tells millions of Canadians that we don't matter as much as others? The City of Regina must make the decision between picking further at an already deep and painful wound or beginning to help the healing process. We need to stand together so we can begin to heal, not just as families and communities, but as a city, a province, and as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look to my council colleagues if anyone has any questions of the delegate. Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you. Goodbye.
I'd like to call upon delegation Danae Ledrew. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you will have the opportunity to respond to any questions that Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Danae Ledrew, and I am a teacher in Regina.
Please proceed.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. For 2 years, we have been asked to do the right thing and to follow the science. Today, I am encouraging you, our City Council, to follow through on doing just that by going forward with the recommendations that you are considering today. As a teacher, when I try an intervention to help a student, I frequently examine the process and data. Is this intervention working? Is it helping or hurting? Does the student need this intervention anymore? Do I need to try a different intervention? It's time that you, decision makers involved in implementing COVID-19 policies in our city, examine the data and process. Did this intervention work? Is it helping or hurting? Is it needed any longer? City Council, it's time to do the right thing and to follow the science. I encourage you and everyone listening to this call to read through the recently submitted Freedom of Information request submitted to the SHA and the government by a Regina law firm. People are asking questions about the pandemic response, and rightfully so. We know more now than we did in March 2020, and we certainly know more now than we did in October 2021 when the City of Regina implemented a proof of vaccine or negative test to enter its facilities. This policy implemented in October 2021 has negatively impacted many citizens. I think of my friends who could no longer participate in Special Olympics sports because they utilize city facilities to run their amazing programs for people with intellectual disabilities. I think of students across the city who were not able to join their classes to attend field trips and career fairs based on a personal medical choice. I think of citizens who frequented our city's leisure facilities for years and now suddenly had to spend $30, $40, $50, or $60 to do so, while other citizens continue to utilize the same facilities at no extra cost to them. This policy adds up and takes a toll, not only financially, but mentally and emotionally as well. This policy has divided families, friends, workplaces, and has divided our city. And for what? How has it served us? Interesting enough, this year's Saskatchewan Winter Games that were slated to take place in our city from February 20th to 26th were canceled. This event was going to require that all athletes be fully vaccinated, and yet the event was still called off due to COVID-19. I believe that tells us something. In the report before you today, we know that there were 332 individuals hospitalized. Of the 332 patients, 110, 33.1%, were not fully vaccinated. That means 66.9% of the individuals hospitalized were fully vaccinated. We know now that all people, regardless of their medical choice, can in fact contract and spread COVID-19 to others. We also know now, thankfully, the Omicron variant is much milder coronavirus than what we've dealt with previously. The City of Regina spends $80,000 a month currently in order to facilitate the proof of vaccination or negative test in its facilities. That suggests roughly $320,000 has been spent since its implementation. $320,000 to keep certain tax-paying citizens out of city facilities, while those who are allowed in can still contract and spread the virus. I find this number deplorable given what we know now. The fact that we were spending $80,000 a month on this discriminatory policy while a homeless camp was being operated by the willpower and goodwill of Regina's people speaks volumes about the City Council's priorities. I never imagined I'd see something like this happen in the city that I love, and I hope this never happens again. The municipal government should not have such influence and intrusion on its people's personal medical choices. COVID-19 is one aspect of health, one piece of the pie. It's time the city refocus its attention and funds to other aspects of life in Regina and encourage the return of unity to our city, regardless of people's medical choices. People need their livelihoods and jobs back. Enough is enough. Consider what we now know. Do the right thing. Follow the science. And please end this policy now. Thank you sincerely for your time.
Thank you very much, Danae. I will wait to see if my council colleagues have any questions for you. Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation to council this afternoon and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you.
To the mover and seconder of the agenda, would you consider a friendly amendment to remove two delegations, Wade Schaefer, delegation DE 22-12 and DE 22-14, Brooklyn Hodel, both from Regina, are unable to attend today. So I'm just looking to amend the agenda.
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
That was statutory.
Thanks very much. We're moving on to, we don't have someone calling in right now. We're moving on to DE 22-13, Mike McCullough. I'd like to call upon Delegation Mike McCullough. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you will have the opportunity to respond to any questions Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike McCullough. I'm a Regina resident. I'm not calling on behalf of any organization, just myself and my family. I'm calling today just because I would implore the council to follow the provincial guidelines and lift all mandates. People want the ability to enter city facilities to watch their kids participate in their activities without having to prove to anyone that they are not sick. Once there, it'd be nice to breathe freely without any face coverings. I, like many others, am tired of breathing in stale CO2 on a daily basis. The lifting of restrictions does not mean people cannot wear a mask wherever they would like or stay home to avoid large crowds. It simply gives everyone a choice to do what they feel is best for themselves and their family. The freedom to choose is all anyone is looking for, and it is a right that everyone deserves. This freedom should never have been taken from anyone to begin with. The council should provide a consistent message to the public and follow the provincial guidelines and lift all restrictions.
Thank you very much. I'll just check in with my council colleagues to see if they have any questions.
Sure.
I don't see any, sir. Thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon, and I'll ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Sandra Keep. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to present to City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions that Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Yes, hello. My name is Sandra. I'm calling from the rural Saskatchewan. I've just wanted to call to give my voice to say that we do visit Regina frequently for business and for family. We owned a house there at one time, which we don't anymore, just recently sold it. But in the meantime, we go to Regina often, and we would like to, we fully support, my husband and I fully support to remove the restrictions, all restrictions, and the mandates and the passports from the city. And we fully believe that we should have that taken down.
Thank you very much. I'll see if any members of my council have questions for you. Seeing no questions, I'll thank you very much for call. Oh.
Also, I just would like to say I'm also a healthcare worker.
Thank you very much.
And I feel that this push and all this is maybe not necessary. I think people want choice should be there, and if they could start looking at other treatments, if there is some help that they can look at other treatments to help treat people if they're sick. And of course, people are sick, they should stay home. I do agree with that. So,
Thank you very much for your presentation to council this afternoon. Sandra, I'll ask that you please leave the meeting now.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Sue Derringer. Could you please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from? You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to questions that Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Sue Deranger, and I thought I was muting this. Okay, it's gone. And I'm from Regina, and I'm representing myself.
Excellent. Please proceed.
Yes, I will be short and brief, but I am not in favor of the lifting of restrictions. As an immunocompromised, disabled person, this will make me a prisoner. People say, well, go ahead, use your mask, but my mask only protects you from me. So if you don't have a mask on, I am not protected. This is very disconcerting. I will be made a prisoner. People talk about freedom and charter of rights. Let's talk about disability rights. Let's talk about the Accessible Canada Act, and a Saskatchewan Act is coming shortly. This is taking away the rights of disabled people. I am feeling very uneasy about this. People talk about freedom, but this is a freedom because you made a choice. What about the freedom that have been denied oppressed peoples? Look at the history of Canada. Look at the oppression of the first peoples of these lands, the original inhabitants. That was freedom taken away, and some of that still exists. People that are talking about freedom, it's about entitled, privileged choices, and this really upsets me. Think about the person next door that's immunocompromised, that's disabled. Think about if all the people without these mandates start going into the hospitals and people start getting bumped off and cannot be serviced because of this. Think about all of that. It isn't fair. And they say Omicron is mild. I've had 2 family members intubated. One currently, one survived. That is not mild. Mild compared to what? So I don't have much more to say, but I hope that you, when you're assessing this, that you think about the freedoms of all citizens, not people that are entitled. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Deranger. I'll look to my council colleagues to see if anyone has any questions. I don't see any. I'll thank you again very much for your presentation to council this afternoon and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Elizabeth Lesko. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions that Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Hear me?
We can just barely. Can you try again?
Hello?
There. Yeah, we can hear you now. Please proceed.
Hi, perfect. My name is Elizabeth Lesko. I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan, and I am representing myself. My name is Elizabeth Lesko. I'm a registered respiratory therapist at the Regina General Hospital. I work in ICU wards and emergency, as well as having experience in the long-term care facility Wascana Rehab Center. I'm as frontline as they come. I see the sickest of the sick. I've been working with this virus for 24 months now. I am choosing not to quote too much science during this presentation, as the science is already out there. But what I will focus on today is my experience working in this mess since day one. I will start with the definition. Informed consent is the law on consent to medical treatment. And I quote, "Every human being of adult years and of sound mind has the right to determine what shall be done to his or her own body. Voluntary consent. Patients must always be free to consent to or refuse treatment and to be free of suggestions of duress or coercion." I will come back to the term coercion. Number 1, the vaccines do not stop transmission or infection. This is now well known. There are many papers on this fact. Some doctors say it can lessen your symptoms, but there is no guarantee. I have seen lots of patients die while being fully vaccinated. Last week, 66.9% of people with COVID in Saskatchewan were double vaccinated. Just as Mo says, the benefits of this policy no longer outweigh the costs. If you want to be vaccinated, by all means, take it. But if you don't want to take it, you do not have to be coerced. Freedom of coercion. Looking at the academic literature, there is no concrete evidence to support such public health measures anymore. But there is growing evidence of the harm it is imposing on society. Measures that may have made sense in 2020 and 2021 no longer can be demonstrably justified in the context of Omicron. What we know about this virus is in regards to significant decrease in virulence and incredibly high transmission, regardless of vaccination status. Number 2, when did we stop talking about natural immunity? When I first got hired with the health region 15 years ago, they asked me if I had chickenpox when I was young. Why, you ask? Because natural immunity lasts a lifetime. Did you also know when SARS-CoV-1 was in Toronto in 2002 that the people who survived infection then had their T cells tested over 15 years later and noticed that they had lasting immunity? Since when have we abandoned natural immunity? The vax passports do not take into account natural immunity. Our immune systems are a robust wealth of knowledge and experience that is built up over time, and a lot of people have seemed to have forgotten all about it. Number 4, has everybody heard of the term HIPAA? The Health Information Privacy Act. Asking for someone's information is a violation of HIPAA. This is illegal and discrimination. Did you know as a healthcare provider, I am not allowed to know anybody's health information who is not my patient? Yet we are freely asking people to show whether or not they've had a medication put into their body or a test put up their nose. This violates HIPAA. Not only does it violate HIPAA, it violates the very God-given and constitutional rights as a free citizen of this country. The freedom to choose and to decide what does or does not go into their bodies, and to be free from ridicule and shame for making such a choice. The vaccine pass is simply another coercive measure to divide and stigmatize those people who are only exercising those God-given and constitutional rights to keep their private medical information just that, private. You simply can't ignore the negative impact that this vaccine passport has had on our society and the human race. We have spent decades preaching to our children to love thy neighbor, don't judge people by the color of their skin, and now we are telling people to stay away from other humans because they don't have a shot or because they simply refuse to tell you if they have it or not. The division and segregation that this has put onto people is almost to the point of no return. It's time to let the people choose for themselves. We have had all the tools available to us. We have vaccines, natural immunity, rapid antigen tests, masks, government assistance programs which provide a space for families to isolate if needed. The government's job is to present all the options, and it is now time to let go of the mandates and allow the people to do the right thing and the freedom to make their own choices. So I leave you with these questions. When does it end? When do we learn to live with this virus? I'm a tax-paying citizen, and I thought I lived in a free and democratic society. I thought I had freedom of medical choice and medical choice without coercion. I cannot use any facility because I will not tell somebody my medical choices. And the Health Information Privacy Act protects me and everybody else who refuses to reveal their status. But what should not have happened is to be discriminated against because we feel the need to protect our sovereignty. Freedom of choice, freedom of body, freedom of mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lesko. I'm just going to look to my council colleagues to see if anyone has questions for you. Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon to council and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you.
Council, we're moving on to DE 22-19. I'd like to call upon Delegation Dan Coggins. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions that Council may have for you. Good afternoon. Mr. Coggins, you may have muted yourself. Could you press *6 on your phone?
Sure, I've done that, I believe.
There you go, sir. You're good to go.
Great, thank you. Hi there. I'm Dan Coggins. I'm a private citizen. I'm an older adult with chronic asthma, and I live in Regina, Saskatchewan. I want to thank you all for letting us give you some input today on this important matter. So we're talking today about lifting the proof of vaccine requirement and not requiring folks to wear masks when they use city facilities. You know, that's great that we're talking about this. I want these things lifted too. But you know, I want a lot of things. For example, I want a 1963 Studebaker Avanti. If you don't know what that is, it's a classic car. But although I could afford one today, but although I could buy it today, I really can't afford it. I can't afford the licensing. I can't afford the insurance. I can't afford the place to store it. The body work and all the time it takes to do that work myself. I can't afford it. So today you're deciding whether the city can afford to remove some public safety measures. You could decide today to remove the proof of vaccine. You could decide to not require folks to wear masks when using city facilities. You could decide today to lift these public safety measures. You could leave it up to each of us to decide what our gut tells us in the absence of daily case number reports. But you can't afford that. You can't afford the costs of being lulled into a false sense of security by this supposedly kinder, gentler COVID, this COVID that is still taxing our healthcare system, this COVID that the Canadian Medical Association says you cannot ignore or simply wish away. The same COVID that the World Health Organization is still calling a pandemic. You know, you could hope that the next COVID variant won't be as bad as Delta was. But can you afford to take that chance? Can you afford to roll the dice for the rest of us? I don't think so. So I would ask the council today to please leave these public safety measures in place, at least until we see how things have worked out for other jurisdictions that are lifting these measures. So please say no to the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. I'll look to my council colleagues to see if any of them have questions for you. Seeing none. Thank you. Sorry, I apologize,
Wait,
Mr. Coggins. Seeing none. Sorry. Councillor.
Just a second. Okay, yes, I just wanted to clarify that that was Mr. Coggins.
Yes, it was Mr. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, and can I ask him a question if he's still on the line?
Certainly, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, this is Councillor Stavnichuk. Through the chair, what if these measures were removed? Would you attend city facilities, or would you just choose not to?
No, I would. If they were removed, yeah, I would not. I would not attend city facilities.
Okay.
Yeah, I've already made that. Okay, I'll stop. Thank you.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I think that Studebaker's in Cuba, by the way.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye now.
There's no further questions from Council, Mr. Coggins. I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon and ask that you please leave the meeting.
My pleasure. Goodbye.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Jeremy Sinclair. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to present to City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions that they may have for you. Good afternoon.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Jeremy Sinclair, lifetime resident of Regina, and represent myself as a citizen and taxpayer.
Please proceed, sir.
Yes, I am in support of removing all, full support of removing all COVID rules, mandates, restrictions, everything that was put upon us over the past 2 years out of the, out of the good idea for people's safety and help everybody to be safe, et cetera, et cetera. But, after 2 years of watching everything that's happened, a lot of data entered my brain, and I took the shots. So I listened to the TV. I wanted to be a good person. I took the needles, and I was told they'd be 95% effective and they were safe. And I took 2, and then I was done. Thought I could have my life back, and no, you got to take a third one. Apparently, it doesn't work. Sorry, we lied. Take a third one, and that's where I'm like, what's going on here? I put 2 of this because I trusted people. I trusted people I don't even know. I trusted Fauci. I trusted my leaders to, and I felt cheated. And after I got my 2 needles, they said, still have to wear the mask. Whoa, that's big. That was a big lie to me. So they said, once you get fully vaccinated, no more masks, no more staying at home, no more safety, no more distancing. But that was a lie. So I felt cheated and snubbed, and and then they want me to take the third one, and you still have to wear a mask. I'm like, something's wrong here. Something's inside my gut, in my heart, and my mind is saying danger. What's going on? So I started asking questions, researching. I started using my brain to think about what's happening here. Not because what I see on TV and what on the newspaper is telling me is not what I see in my life. What I see my friends and family and relatives, they see something completely different than what's being told to me every day. To be scared and stay inside and put masks on my kids, even though my kids are healthy, And so it didn't add up. So I did research, and just my eyes were opened, and I think everyone inside their hearts knows that people are just afraid. They're afraid to say something. People are wanting someone to stand up and say something. Nobody wants to be the first person to take a step out and be bold. And after 2 years, I'm done with it. I'm time to go back to normal. I'm tired of. I'm not going to be. I'm not taking any more drugs or more needles. I think we all know what's going on, but everyone's scared. They didn't want to talk about it. And the time for being scared is over, right? I think we're all sold a bad bill of goods from the media, from our politicians, from these doctors. Like, it's going the wrong way, and the problem is not COVID. The problem is people that are controlling us and the government making all these stupid rules for what we can do, how we can breathe, how we can live. Again, I'm using my brain. I thought critically, what's going on? I was obedient. I was a good person, and everything I did I was told, it's got to do more. Got to do more. Now I got to get I go out for a restaurant. I have to show a pass to go eat food, to go to a movie. My friends and like my brothers and sisters, they can't come with me, even though they're healthy. They can't come to a restaurant with me. They can't go to a movie with me. They can't go on a plane with me. They can't travel. They can't go to a gym with me. Even though they're healthy, we're both healthy. It doesn't add up. And I think 2 years is enough for people to see what's going on. And I know it's definitely going the wrong way, and we're being lied to. And people don't want to admit it, but at some point you got to admit it, what's going on. And it's not good, and we're being lied to. And people don't want to admit it, but you got to at some point. But I swallowed my pride. I saw what's going on, and I'm saying I'm not having it anymore. Yeah, I admit it. I was lied to, and I accepted that fact. Everyone else should look at themselves in their hearts and look at themselves in the mirror and say, do we want to keep going this way forever? Do we want this for our kids and the future of Canada? Is this way we want to live forever over some cold virus, which has a very, 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 very low death rate, very low. So, it just doesn't make sense. And I'm tired of being scared, and people should stop being scared.
Mr. Sinclair, you're at 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll give you 10 seconds to wrap up.
Yes, I'm saying stop being afraid of taking out and getting your life back. We control our lives. My health is my responsibility. Someone else's health is not my responsibility. Everyone's health is their own responsibility. That's the point.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions?
I'm just looking to council. One moment, sir. Seeing no questions from council, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon and ask that you please leave the meeting. I'd like to call upon Delegation Philip Cameron. I'd like you to please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which time you'll have the opportunity to respond to any questions that Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Philip Cameron. I'm calling from Regina, and I am speaking on my own behalf. We have heard much talk, most of it from our Premier, about the way that COVID and its associated public health measures have created two groups of people in the province. I agree with Mr. Moe, which is rare for me, that there have been two groups created. However, I probably characterize those two groups differently than he would. In my view, one group, which constitutes the majority of the people in this city and across the province, are those of us who have done our part by being fully vaccinated, by wearing our masks, by limiting our social exposures in order to protect ourselves, our families, and our community. We have done this in order to try to ensure that public spaces are as safe as they can possibly be for everyone. The other group I would characterize as those who have put their own self-interest, in some cases very narrow self-interests, and in some cases misguided self-interests, selfishly ahead of the good of the community. The last speaker said it perfectly, I think, when he said, "Nobody else's health is my responsibility." Well, I reject that. We live in a social world. We are one another's neighbors. We are one another's caretakers, and other people's health is our responsibility. I will conclude, I won't speak for long, but I will ask Council, I will conclude by asking Council, in the context of the current time, when hospitalizations are equal to the highest they have been at any time during the pandemic, with which of these two groups do you stand? Do you stand with those of us who have done our part for the whole community to make the place, to make our community safe and to get us through the pandemic with as little damage done as possible to the health and safety of others? Or do you stand with those who have selfishly put their own interests ahead of the good of the community? That's what I would leave you with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll see if, one moment, I'll see if any members of council have any questions. Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon to council and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Try it again. Council, just to advise that Delegation 22-11 and 22-18 did not contact the Deputy Clerk, and so we were going to close off hearing from the delegations now. We'll now consider item CM 22-3, COVID-19 update. Can I have someone from administration, please, introduce the report?
Thank you, Mayor Masters. As the report before City Council, as you can see today, there are 4 specific recommendations that have been prepared by administration in response to the recent announcements from the provincial government. As Ms. Folk and her team have been the lead on this since the inception of our actions over the past few months, if not years, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Folk to walk you and members of council through the specific recommendations.
Through you, Mayor Masters, to be consistent with the province move to remove public health orders, the administration is recommending the city follow suit. It's very difficult to maintain the restrictions we have in place without a provincial health order. It adds to the public's confusion of what's required in public spaces. What this means is removing the proof of vaccination or negative test requirements to access city facilities as of February 14th at 12:01 a.m. So starting when we open for business on Monday, the public would no longer be required to show a proof of vaccination or provide a negative test result. We are also recommending the mandatory masking requirement in our indoor city facilities and on Regina Transit be removed once the provincial health order is lifted at the end of the month. The city will continue to strongly encourage mask usage and share public health messages. Stay home if you're sick, wash your hands, get vaccinated, use rapid tests. We will continue to provide masks at all of our public facilities as well as on Regina Transit. With the lifting of the public health orders, we are also recommending that Council and its committees return to in-person meetings and that City Hall, specifically Henry Baker Hall, be reopened to the public on March 1st. As we are entering the phase of learning to live with COVID, we're also recommending the authority that was delegated to the City Manager by City Council on April 15th, 2022 through resolution be rescinded effective today. As we have throughout this pandemic, we will continue to make the safety and well-being of employees and residents our top priority and will continue to monitor the provincial government's direction and the advice of our public health officer. With that, myself and the city team are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicola and Ms. Folk. I'll open it up to members of council. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Oh, Councillor Shaw, apologize, I'm talking to delegates still. Councillor Shaw, please proceed.
I've been called worse, my masters. Ms. Folk, I just have a question. I know I've been answering a lot of emails from my residents that have been personally emailing me, and I've been getting the same message. Can you tell us what the main message has been coming from the calls to service from the people in Regina, if they're for it or against it, to the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters, this morning our internal COVID task force meeting team met, and I was advised that over the last day we've received over 500 service requests. Our team has able to process 300 of those this morning between 8 and 10 o'clock this morning, and all were requesting the lifting of restrictions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor Masters.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Mayor. My question for the administration. You've indicated that your decision to recommend following the provincial guidelines and the lifting of provincial guidelines was based on a difficulty to enforce those guidelines and confusion. In making your recommendation, did you consider science, and if so, what science did you consider?
Through you, Mayor Masters, thank you for the question, Councillor Hawkins. Through this conversation and discussion, our discussions with the Saskatchewan Health Authority and the Deputy Public Health Officer assigned to Regina was instrumental in making, helping us through that conversation and making those recommendations. Part of that conversation is with the lifting of restrictions across the community, it becomes more and more difficult to try to manage that. People have been given the information they need to self-manage their health. So where we are at currently, we have continued to follow suit, very similar to the City of Saskatoon earlier today, or earlier this week, the Regina Public School Board as well this week.
One follow-up question, if I might, through you, Mayor. The Regina Public Health Officer is a member of the Saskatchewan Medical Association. The Saskatchewan Medical Association has recommended that restrictions be maintained. Do you know, or did he explain why his recommendation was different than that of the professional body of doctors to which he belongs?
Through you, Mayor Masters, we did not have that conversation, Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I'm going to go back to Councillor Shaw as you spoke first. Councillor Shaw, could I have you move the report?
Absolutely.
Councillor Hawkins, could I have you second it? Therefore, I'll just ask for a seconder. I apologize.
Sorry, Mayor. As a procedural matter, I'd ask that each of the recommendations be voted on separately,
Okay. Okay.
and I'm not prepared to second it.
Thank you. Got it.
I'll second it, Councillor Mole.
Thank you, Councillor Mole. When we come to vote, sir, we'll come back around to the recommendations. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, I'm glad we're going to be voting on these independently. For the passports, this one I think is the most difficult. I think it's been incredibly successful across the province at increasing our vaccination rate. I guess my concern now is if there are only a patchwork of organizations, including municipalities, the effectiveness of the actual order recedes. Can I ask administration what public health officials with the SHA and other public health officials outside of the health authority have said about vaccine passports and masking?
Through you, Mayor Masters, our conversation with the Saskatchewan Health Authority this morning indicates that the situation in Regina is very positive when it comes to vaccination, and the population is extremely highly vaccinated. So currently, as it sits today, 82% of those eligible to be vaccinated within Regina have 2 doses, and that is a very high rate.
Just to be clear, through the chair, you have not heard an endorsement of these recommendations from any health authority or public health expert, is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Masters, the conversation we had today was focused on the position that we are currently in and the public health orders that are in place and the numbers that we are seeing today. We're anticipating that ICU numbers are going to continue to remain steady and they will not continue to increase. The viral load in the wastewater system is trending downwards, and we are in a position where we are looking at trying to build an environment where we are creating as much safety as we can for the public.
Thank you. There was a lot of lines there that I'm going to have to read between, but I think I heard what I needed to hear. For the first one, I'm going to oppose supporting this for a couple of reasons. If we're thinking about the rescinding of emergency measures, COVID was over once in the summer. That didn't end very well. I think we're going to have to be a bit more nimble and ensure that the city manager is in a position to respond as needed rather than through council motions. As I vote against it, I think the signal that I would like to send to administration is this should certainly come back, but I would like it to come back with some direction from a public health authority that we have transitioned from a pandemic to an endemic. Regarding masking, I'm going to vote against this recommendation. I'm a bit struck by this notion that individual health and decision-making is the way out of this. I think that's actually quite contrary to what we've seen. There is a public health authority. The measures so far have been collective. It would be like dealing with HIV/AIDS in this province with only abstinence training. I think it's a bit absurd to just reduce it to now we're on our own. Masks have also been very effective at dealing with occupational health and safety issues. I'm going to vote against this with the expectation again that this would come back to council in a month's time or later on, because we will be reviewing COVID measures with frequent reports. I would also like to see at that time a position on occupational health and safety and how the measures for the public with regards to masking can actually enhance the safety both of the public as well as of employees. I also believe, as someone who takes transit, as an employee at a public agency, as an elected official, a parent, and a son of someone who is very concerned about their health in the public spaces, that we maintain masking. It is simple and certainly not intrusive. I'll be voting in support of returning to Henry Baker Hall on March 4th, and I do appreciate the difficulty of making this recommendation to council, but I thank administration for their work. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor. So just a question. We also have Dr. Hennick that does provide feedback to us on behalf of the SHA. Can someone just elaborate when the last time we did speak with him and what the recommendation was or the conversation was from him, please?
Councillor Bresciani, Mr. Nicol and Ms. Folk and myself did arrange a call before this meeting with Dr. Hennick this morning. He did say that Omicron is still quite active in terms of where we're at, but we are on the downslope from a very high peak. In terms of the city of Regina, the original modeling showed that we would peak around February 1st for Omicron, and in fact, it was January 31st, so well done on them. We had, at that time, 79 in hospital with 11 in ICU. As of earlier this week, we had 54 in hospital and 5 in ICU. Our high back during the Delta wave, by comparison, was 69 in hospital with 35 in ICU. So Omicron is affecting people in a more mild fashion, I mean, as in if you're using the ICU measurements. Hospitalization is still high, simply ICU is steady and lower. And it is not to be compared with Delta in September. He did say that highly encouraged, making masks available for entryway of the buses, or the, in terms of making sure it's available for anyone entering a bus, kind of in an enclosed space, encouraging people to wear a mask in public space, but leave it up to choice, as facilities are larger and distance can typically be maintained. They're looking through February into March in some respects. The number for vaccinated, I think Ms. Folk references, we have 82% vaccinated with two doses, and boosters are rising. We have a high, here in Regina, we have a highly vaccinated population. Proof of vaccination right now is an additional safeguard. However, he recognizes that there is some movement coming to a time where we have to move along, and we're seeing essentially that Canada, if not around the world, people are pulling the trigger, so to speak, in terms of removing mandates. The wastewater testing is high but trending down, and it's only one of the parameters that they look at. Yeah, he says it's. I asked the question, if we get a small bump, will the ICU go up? And doubts it in terms of cases. Hospital cases may go up, but ICU probably most likely not. And that I did ask about a risk to kids under 5 with removal of proof of vaccination restrictions. And the response was basically the removal of restrictions won't impact them than what they've already been experienced in the public setting. Although he did add, there is no true way to quantify this. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Ms. Folk. Maybe I'll kick it to you if you pick up on anything else I missed in my notes.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Masters, I think you've covered it.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess the other, so did we hear how many are in hospital right now with COVID? Did I get, what was that number through the chair? And if it was said earlier, I missed it.
As of February 6th, there were 54 folks in hospital with 5 in ICU, which is down from a high of 79 and 11. But we just don't have it as of today. I believe it gets released this week.
Okay, thank you. We know that many other countries have started to also in the same path. We also know that hearing from other provinces, they're also following Saskatchewan and Alberta, as well as moving to life in a normal fashion, normalcy for people. And I do believe that there is something to be said about the fear of people are so worried about COVID. If you talk to the elderly people, if you talk to, people with disability, even with children at risk, but there's also something about the mental health piece. And for example, of my daughter who has a disability, but she also is very excited for life to return to normalcy. It's been very scary for many. And so I understand it's a balancing act, but I also believe that, again, my family did have COVID and it was very mild. So I thank the administration for all of the support and all of the work that they've done on this. These are not easy decisions. And I guess just the last question, if I can, what is the next report that would come back? How does this play out?
Through you, Mayor Masters, we have a commitment to provide a verbal update at each council meeting. So of course, next Wednesday, council is meeting, and the next touch point would be then.
Great. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thanks, Councillor Brasciani. Councillor Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. I have a few questions, first of all, through you. There were some additional questions about hospitalization rates due to COVID. And I do want to, I think you have acknowledged that the numbers in this report before us are inaccurate, because the most recent numbers are 384, not 332 in hospital due to COVID. I did want to know what the rate of vaccination was. I was I was hoping that this report would have had those numbers. What is the current number of fully vaccinated residents in Regina?
Ms. Volker.
Through you, Mayor Masters, thank you for the question. Councillor Stadnichuk, of course, the numbers that were reported in this report were as of February 6th. I believe yesterday the province released their weekly reporting. So of course the province is providing information weekly. So yes, the numbers would have shifted. Dr. Hennick did provide us with the vaccination rate as of this morning in the Regina area, and it is 82% of those eligible to be vaccinated have 2 doses. So Regina is very highly vaccinated when we compare across the rest of the province.
Great, thank you for that. Sorry, I've got my scribbles all over here. I am actually going to make a motion for another consideration, and I did send this in advance. So I do want to make a motion so that it would be an additional point recommendation for that would be before us. So I don't know if they have it ready to go up, but it would be a recommendation. It would be number 5. So it would be voted on after we have gone through the first 4 recommendations. And that motion is to direct administration to explore opportunities to offer exercise classes or programs at our main recreational facilities for residents who are fully vaccinated or can show a negative COVID-19 test. So I don't know if it would be shown on the screen or... And should I explain why I'm bringing this forward?
Yep, now that it's up on the screen, Councillor Stadnichuk, okay. You'll have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Okay. I am not sure what is going to happen with our vote today, but I am really concerned that if all of these 4 recommendations are approved, especially number 2 and 3, that 82% of the fully vaccinated residents in this city, in the words of Ms. Swerd, who spoke to us today, that the right to choose is now going to be taken away from vaccinated people. They're going to feel, a lot of them might not feel safe going into city facilities. A lot of them, especially if they have some health issues or they're immune compromised, they might not feel safe going into any kind of exercise programs. I have had some discussions, just really, really briefly. So this motion would require administration to explore what is possible in terms of offering some programming just for those who are fully vaccinated or can show proof of proof of a negative test. And I think that people who have done their part in protecting our community and gotten vaccinated, which is the vast majority of people in Regina, that they have a right to be able to attend our facilities, our city facilities, and feel comfortable and safe. So that is why I'm introducing this. If the other measures fail, I don't think this would be necessary, obviously, but I do want to have this as an option for us to consider today. That's all I have, Mayor Masters.
Thank you, Councillor Stanczyk. Councillor Stanczyk's motion needs an amendment. Or sorry, I apologize, needs a seconder.
Hawkins.
You have a second to your amendment, Councillor Stanczyk. The only qualifier I think that would need to be added to this, and I'll double check with administration, but this would only be necessary, Councillor Stanczyk, if point number 2 passes, as in the removal of the proof of vaccination in our facilities would trigger this needing to be in effect. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, one moment, please. We're just updating the motion. Amendment, I apologize. The amendment before you, I'm going to turn it over to administration to speak to the amendment, just to provide any feedback on it. Ms. Folk, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Masters. So in relation to this amendment, the administration would request time to assess it from a legal and non-operational impact if this was to move forward.
Thank you. Council, any members of council wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Stanczyk, I see, oh, there we go. Councillor Findura.
Sorry, Mayor, I threw you to jump in this. That was a really fast explanation. I didn't catch any of that. Could I ask for the explanation what that means? I heard partial, so could I get a repeat of that? And I'm going to ask another question. To you, Mayor Masters, please.
Sorry, Councillor Findura, are you asking for the what administration stated?
Just said yes.
Oh, certainly. Ms. Vogt, would you like to repeat that for council?
Absolutely, Mayor Masters. So what the administration would request is time to assess the legal and the operational impacts if this was to pass in terms of looking at what the implications would be and whether or not it is feasible.
Okay, so through you, Mayor Masters, so through the administration. So is there a timeline where how long you need for this? Should there be something added to this motion then, or the amendment, I should say?
Through you, Mayor Masters, based on the current situation we're in, I would anticipate that this would occur quite expediently.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Okay, Councillor Zakidniak, speaking to the amendment.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to speak to the amendment. I want to speak to the main motion. I just don't know. I just wanted to say that. So I can wait a moment then,
Yeah.
or should
Yeah,
I
well,
just go?
we have to vote on the amendment in order to proceed back to the main motion.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Mancinelli.
Just want to make sure I get the spirit of this proper. So what you're looking for is a chance to offer like exercise classes for people who might be immunocompromised and nervous about exposure, and you just want to make sure they have a safe way to do that still. Is that correct, Councillor Stanczyk?
Yes, it is. I know that at the beginning of the pandemic, there were some grocery stores, for example, or businesses that offered specific hours for seniors just as one example, so that they could shop just because they felt nervous around being in a large, crowded space. So I know that we heard today, even from a delegate, that he would not attend any of the city facilities if all of these measures, public health measures, were removed. So I think that we have to, there's 82% fully vaccinated. We need to offer them something, some chance to feel comfortable. So it might not be just immune compromised, but anyone who's fully vaccinated.
Okay, so I guess with the spirit of safety instead of divisiveness, I can support this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mancinelli. I'll ask Council one more time. Anyone wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Shaw?
I just have a quick question here to clarify this. Could the class not, I guess it would have to be a private class. So if I went to a private fitness class, and could they not offer classes that say only people that are vaccinated can be in it? Administration, could you speak to that? Or I'm not sure who would know the answer to that, to the chair.
Through you, Mayor Masters, respectfully, I would suggest that we would consider that when we look at the implications and would provide an overview when we brought something forward.
Okay, and one of the other concerns I have with this, we would say, okay, they need to be double vaccinated, but then does that go further by saying, okay, if you've got a cold, you can't come, or you've got a flu that you can't come? So can you offer any kind of explanation with that, administration, through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Masters, we are continuing to encourage positive public health messages, which includes if you are sick, please stay home.
Right. Okay. You know what? That's good. Thank you, Ms. Folk.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you very much. I will not be supporting this, and there's a few reasons. But the first is that we have created quite a divide in our city already. A divide where people who feel vaccinated, they've got the vaccination, they've done their job, and I absolutely support that. And there's others feel that they cannot get the vaccine for whatever reason. Some was for health, some was for other options for themselves to decide. I think when we start looking at separate programming for separate groups, we open up another can of worms. Another can of worms that means that, well, you're this group and you're this group. And then I ask the question, what programs? Where does it end? Does that mean a yoga class? Does that mean a dance class? Then are we also putting a pressure on other organizations that offer programming? Are they then going to be expected to put on programs for people who are vaccinated and people who are unvaccinated? I think here's the important message as we move forward in this pandemic, and we know that we're coming to the end, but we still need to be cautious, absolutely. But people know their own, and if they wear a mask, they choose to wear a mask, they can still go and wear a mask. I can't accept this. I cannot support this because I think it'll actually cause more of a divide in our community than actually trying to bring people together to move forward. So I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. I'll do one last call. Any other members of council? Seeing none, Councillor Stanczyk, did you want to close off debate?
Yes, Mayor Masters, thank you. Administration will have to study this and look at all the possibilities and implications of doing something like this. So supporting this amendment does not mean it's going to happen absolutely, but we will be getting some kind of a report back in terms of what is possible. And that's basically what this amendment is asking for, is just to explore opportunities or options. So I think that we need to provide something. If the recommendation to remove all proof of vaccination is removed, and this would at least give some option for people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stadenchuk. I'll ask the city clerk to please call the vote. Councillor Bresciani, can you vote?
Yes, I can.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion carries 6-4, 4 against, and Councillor LeBlanc is absent from the meeting.
Mayor Masters, sorry.
Yes, Councillor Bresciani?
I accidentally hit the yes and I meant the no. Because I had to reboot it and go back in. That's why you had asked me. So I got in and I hit the yes and I meant the no. Can the clerk take that?
One moment, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we can take that. So that would mean that it was a tie vote. The amendment is lost.
A point of order, please.
Councillor Stadenchuk?
I guess I'm just a little bit concerned that it might look like a changed vote once the results have been shown. So
I think that would be valid.
Is that normally the case?
Councillor Stadenchuk, that would be valid with the exception that Councillor Bresciani was clear in her comments just prior to the vote that she would not support it. I would actually agree with you in another instance, but Councillor Bresciani was clear with regard to her not supporting the motion of the amendment.
All right, that's fine.
Going back to the main motion, Councillor Zakidniak, you're up.
Would I be able to continue on the main motion?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, procedurally, we haven't seen the vote on the screen.
Oh.
Can we see the vote on the screen, please?
1 minute. I'm going to touch base with the city clerk. And Councillor Stadenchuk, you're correct. You have a few minutes left to talking to the main motion.
Yeah, I can do it if that's what is in front of us, yeah. Through you, Madam Mayor, the vote is Councillor Hawkins voted in favor, Councillor Stadnichuk voted in favor, Councillor Zakidniak voted in favor, Councillor Stevens voted in favor, Councillor Mancinelli voted in favor. Councillors voting against are Councillor Bresciani, Councillor Findura, Councillor Moll, Councillor Shaw, and Mayor Masters.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Does that satisfy?
Yes, it does, although what was shown on the screen continued to show Bresciani voting in favor, and she's been clear, and you've ruled correctly, I believe, that she voted against.
City Clerk, go ahead and speak to that in terms of how that vote registers.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So for the record, because it's been publicly noted what Councillor Bresciani's vote is, we will ensure that that is documented correctly in the meeting minutes.
Thank you, City Clerk. Councillor Stadachuk, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. I just want to say that we've heard from a lot of people over the last number of days, and we've heard from delegates today. And there's think still a lot of misinformation about COVID and about vaccines. The facts are, and I will be basing my decision, my vote today on the facts. And the facts are our healthcare system is still under extreme stress. 1 out of 20 healthcare workers were absent this week because of COVID-19. On Wednesday, our hospitals had the highest number of COVID patients, 384. So we are still at record numbers of hospitalization. And Saskatchewan overall, even though Regina's doing not too bad, we still have one of the lowest rates of vaccinated people compared to other provinces. We know that vaccines work. A hospitalization rate of unvaccinated is double that of the vaccinated people with a booster. And I am very concerned that removing public health measures at this time is going to prolong this Omicron wave. It is too soon. We have heard from the Saskatchewan Medical Association, the Canadian Medical Association say it is too soon to remove these measures. Do we want these measures? Do I want these measures removed? Yes, but not right now. I think we need to give our healthcare workers a chance to breathe. We are all tired, but if any one group has the right to complain about being exhausted during this pandemic, it's our healthcare workers. And by removing these measures right now, we're just going to make life even more difficult for our healthcare workers. Until we see significant drop in the number of hospitalization due to COVID, I am not prepared to support a removal from our city facilities at this time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stadachuk. Councillor Zakidniak.
Thank you. So I appreciate the comments that Councillor Stadachuk just made. I support those comments. I'm struggling right now because I'm feeling very disheartened and very frustrated. For starters, there's some serious issues that I've identified with this report. Generally speaking, when we have reports, there's other options outlined and a very thorough explanation regarding how did administration arrive at the recommendations that they're presenting to council. I don't see that in this report. And I think these are very important decisions that we're making. They need to be made very carefully. So I do have a lot of concerns with the information presented in the report. And I also have a lot of concerns about making health decisions based on what the majority of the feedback that we've received over email says. The delegations that we've heard from today, we heard from a mixture of those who wanted restrictions removed and those who do not, who want us to keep the restrictions in place. But once again, I defer to the advice of medical professionals. And as mentioned through some of the previous comments, there are many medical professionals, most, who are saying that we still need these restrictions in place. So I also would, I don't know why we would also need to make a decision about all 4 of these measures today. I don't know, we've discussed how we have updates in our, every time we have a council meeting, we have an update on COVID. We do not need to decide, there's no reason that we need to decide about proof of vaccination, masks, returning to normal in terms of council and at City Hall and opening Henry Baker Hall to everyone. There's no need for us to make all of those decisions all at once. I, up until this point, have been proud of the leadership that City Council has demonstrated in relation to COVID since the election and prior with previous council. I can't say that I feel that City Council and administration is necessarily, based on what I've heard today, willing to continue displaying that leadership, and that is disheartening. I will also say that I may support recommendation number 1, because I think, as we know, we can call a meeting with 24 hours notice, an emergency meeting of council. So it probably is the case that the city manager does not need the emergency powers that were delegated to them. And in terms of the other ones, I'm just, one thing I do want to say, first of all, I don't know why Councillor Stadnichuk's motion, why folks were not willing to support that. That seems like a middle of the road measure that could be put in place so that those who are not feeling comfortable entering facilities, if they're fully vaccinated and want an extra layer of protection, would be able to do so. So I don't know why that failed. And also regarding removing masks, wearing masks is a very simple thing to do. Whether or not you like them or not, I see no good reason why we can't continue wearing masks and have that extra layer of precaution or extra precaution in place, particularly on transit, which is in an enclosed space. It's wintertime. We don't have the windows open on these buses. These recommendations just don't make any sense to me at all. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zakidniak. Any other members of council wish to speak to the main motion? I just have a few questions for administration. With regard to recommendation number 1, rescinding the emergency powers delegated to the city manager by resolution of City Council on April 15th, 2020, effective February 11th, 2022, is there a reason we would rescind the emergency powers? Is it tied to a public health order? Mr. Weary?
Mayor Masters, the origin of this delegation of authority was from the early days of the pandemic and was really requested and approved by council because of all the uncertainty that we were experiencing and the community was experiencing in the early days. And there was a need for, there was a provincial emergency in effect, and there were public health orders that had just been declared. So that was the rationale for it at that time. It has been used primarily for emergency purchases and the like. There's been a few other instances. But as of today, while the pandemic is still with us, I think we know what we're dealing with a bit more clearly than was the case in April of 2020. So that's the main reason. It does line up with the fact that there are no longer any emergency orders in place at the provincial level. It's certainly a decision of council. It does allow for administration to make quick decisions when needed, but we feel, or I think it's the belief of administration that we're at a place now that it's not required. If we need to come back to council, we can do so within the current reporting cycle where COVID is a regular item on the agenda. So that's the reason for the recommendation here. But certainly it's something that could remain in place if council chose for another month or two, or on a sort of a time monitored basis if that was the wish of council.
Thank you, Mr. Weary. I'm going to flip to you, Mr. Nicol, and put you on the spot. Do you feel the need to have the emergency powers delegated to you under this?
Through you, Mayor Masters, no, I'm comfortable with a recommendation that has come from administration. I don't think it's over, but I think as Mr. Ware characterized it, we're in a much different place than we were. And obviously, as anybody who's been watching council this week, there is inherent power under the Cities Act to call an emergency meeting within 24 hours or shorter if needed. And so just as we can be nimble, so can council if required.
Thank you, Mr. Nickel. That helps. As it relates to item number 2, remove the proof of COVID-19 vaccination or negative test requirements for City of Regina facilities. As of Monday, in accordance with the public health order, who in administration can answer the question for me in terms of what are the concerns of the employees who are perhaps currently enforcing this at the expiration of a provincial health order? Ms. Folk?
Through you, Mayor Masters. I think what was highlighted by a number of delegations today, we are seeing concern in the community about being split and very divisive public opinion on this. And there is concern when it comes to not following the public health order, which of course was recommended and supported by the government of Saskatchewan and the chief medical officer. That there will be potential escalation if we are asking for proof of vaccination for those who don't have it once the order is lifted.
Thank you, Ms. Folk. My understanding currently is that there are still, in terms of some of the large gathering events, whether that be concerts or other events, perhaps in certain facilities here in the city, that artists who are traveling require proof of vaccination. Do we have any concerns about enforcing what amounts to kind of a contractual obligation on behalf of hosting things like that?
Through you, Mayor Masters, not at all.
Thank you. Relative to removing the requirement to wear masks when visiting indoor city facilities or while riding Regina Transit upon the expiration of the PHO, potentially at some point in time, either at the end of the month or into March. Do we have any concerns coming on that from employees right now?
Through you, Mayor Masters. At this point, similar to my previous comment, I know when we did speak this morning with Dr. Hennick, and he did talk about Regina Transit, and in particular, continuing to encourage masks. I know before the mandatory masking requirement came into place earlier in the pandemic, the City of Regina did message strong encouragement, and we had high compliance rates, well over 95%. We anticipate that that will continue, and masks would be available as well as a hand sanitizer.
Thank you. My follow-up is going to be similar to point number 2. Point number 2 on the recommendations is, what is the risk we run in terms of our employees if we allow or follow the public health order relative to masks? If the public health order says they're not needed anymore, or not sorry, that's not true. Apologies. Not required anymore. Are there concerns coming in from employees?
Through you, Mayor Masters, at this point, we've just started conversations and discussions with our unions and associations because we moved quite quickly and quite swiftly in terms of the regulations that the province put in place in terms of proof of vaccination for our employees. We have over 94% of our employees who are double vaccinated, and so we feel like we're in a very good position, and those analysis is happening right now and into early next week.
Thank you. I just want to provide a final comment, I think, and I see Councillor Mancinelli, your hand is up. I think it's important that we understand that masks work, and so that when we're looking for ways to kind of end divisiveness and reduce sort of conflict within the community, that everybody understands that there are going to be a large number of people who are going to be comfortable, including our employees, out in public or in facilities or in buildings wearing masks. And that's good, and that's okay, because we do know they reduce transmission of almost anything. We know COVID's not over, and probably won't be anytime soon. So I just want to make sure that on point number 3, that administration is clear about coming back to us if there's any concerns coming from employees, that council's available to address those at the regular council meetings. Thank you. Councillor Mancinelli.
Sorry for the late entry. My apologies. Through the chair, I just thought this was a pretty important vote, and I better take a moment just to explain how I'm basing my portion of the vote. I had no problems when this pandemic started up, and no one had any information erring to the side of caution and stepping outside of the province. It was unknown. It was necessary. I believe those steps mitigated some problems early on. Right now, without a provincial mandate in place, I do not believe I have any authority to do anything but the recommendations on the table. I didn't seek that type of authority when I became a councillor. It was put on by a mandate. And although I received many emails making accusations of wanting authority, I don't think it's anything anyone on council really stepped up to go after. I think it was always about community safety and getting through a real hard time. Hopefully with some of these changes, we can come back together and get through it together. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Mancinelli. Councillor Shaw, I believe this is your motion. You're the mover on this file. Would you like to close off debate?
I would. Thank you, Mayor Masters. Just a few comments here. We proceed through this pandemic by following the public health orders, and we continue to adapt as things change, and we'll continue to change. COVID is not over. We may need to adapt on a continuous basis, but we need to continue to follow the public health orders. I've watched people in our community suffer depression, overdoses, suicide, segregation, loss of jobs. For example, my daughter has lost her chance to compete at the Paralympics because she can no longer practice. This is not the community that I want to be involved in. This is something that is out of our jurisdiction, and we need to follow the public health orders and continue to follow the public health orders. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. City Clerk, can I have you call the vote? Council, I believe the request was to vote on each recommendation on its own. So right now, we are voting on the recommendation to rescind the emergency powers delegated to the city manager. Point number 1.
I'm not sure. Mine's not up. My voting is not up. Is that?
Councillor Shaw, we can see your vote if you were in favor.
Okay, yes.
There we go.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion carries with the following councillors voting in favor: Councillor Hawkins, Councillor Bresciani, Councillor Stadnichuk, Councillor Findura, Councillor Zakidniak, Councillor Mole, Councillor Mancinelli, Councillor Shaw, and Mayor Masters. And voting against is Councillor Stevens. Councillor LeBlanc is absent from the meeting.
Thank you, City Clerk. Coming up next for vote is the recommendation to remove the proof of COVID-19 vaccination or negative test requirements for City of Regina facilities. Please call a vote.
Through you, Mayor Masters, this motion carries with the following councillors voting in favor: Councillors Hawkins, Councillor Bresciani, Councillor Findura, Councillor Stevens, Councillor Mole, Councillor Mancinelli, Councillor Shaw, Mayor Masters, and voting against are Councillor Stadnichuk and Councillor Zakidniak.
Thank you, Clerk. Item 3 up for vote. The recommendation is to remove the requirement to wear masks when visiting indoor city facilities or while riding Regina Transit upon expiration of the existing public health order. Please call the vote.
Through you, Mayor Masters, this carries as well with the following councillors voting in favor: Councillors Bresciani, Findura, Mole, Mancinelli, Shaw, and Mayor Masters. Those councillors voting against are Councillors Hawkins, Stadnichuk, and Zakidniak.
Thank you, Clerk. The last item to be voted upon is the recommendation to return to in-person council and committee meetings with reopening of City Hall, including Henry Baker Hall, to the public effective March 1st. Please call the vote.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this carries as well, with the following councillors voting in favor: Councillors Bresciani, Findura, Stevens, Mancinelli, Mole, Shaw, and Mayor Masters. The following councillors voting against: Councillors Hawkins, Stadnichuk, and Zakidniak.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Bresciani.
So moved.
I'm going to take the second with you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Bresciani may have beat you to it. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. Thank you very much, Council. Have a good week, safe weekend.